Good morning, welcome to 59 Minutes. My name is Levi Kones. My guest today is a lady who has been abroad and back, even as my ticker suggests there. She went to the US way back in 1999 and came back and has given back to society and founded the organization called Made to Thrive, where she mentors young men and women on how to be better and productive members of society. Please join me in welcoming Rosemary Nzambi. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here.
Well, glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Tell us about, before we talk about this, the details of what you do. Mm-hmm. How was the journey like for you to go to the US? When did you go? How was it like? And most importantly, why did you come back?
That's a question everybody asks.
It's so broad,
It's a question that everybody asks me, and you're right, it's very broad, and even the reason I went, or even how my journey going there, was also very broad. First of all, I'm going to start by saying that it's a dream I had for a long time, without knowing I was dreaming about the US.
Yeah.
As a kid, I just dreamt about traveling overseas. I didn't even know where overseas was. I kind of grew up thinking there's a country called overseas because I didn't have much exposure. I grew up in the village, and I saw missionaries from time to time, and all I knew is they came from a place called overseas. So I liked their life and everything, and I thought,
Ngambo.
yes, Ngambo. So because that time nobody said Ngambo, because I didn't ask anybody locally. I'll ask them. I was very curious growing up. So I grew up with an ambition to go overseas to that place. And so anyway, as a young adult, I always knew one thing. I'm either going to go abroad or either to go study there or go get married there or whatever. But the thing is, I wasn't so focused on the marriage thing. I was focused on experiencing that life that those people brought here. So in my mid-20s, I got my first passport. And I had told my mom, before I turn 30, I have to have flown out of this country. Before I die, I have to have flown out of this country and experience life somewhere. So when I went, my journey to go over to the US to begin with, I actually wasn't supposed to be going to the US. I went to the UK on a job assignment, come vacation, and I loved life there. It was the first time in the West World, so I thought, this is it. I'm coming back home. I'm selling it. Actually, I tried to sell my things over the phone from the UK so I can settle there. And so, my boss at the time said, no, that's not how you resign from work, young lady. So I came back home, resigned, and I shared with them, and then they actually the ones that pointed me to the US. So I'd always wanted to study. So by that time, I developed an interest in technology. And because I couldn't afford college, I learned in the streets of Luthuli and River Road, following people as they fix computers. So quickly I learned how to repair computers. I learned how to build one from scratch to finish, set it up and sell it. And I sold several computers without a business name. But I sold enough to save enough to take myself to the States to now go study, get the credentials. And so in 1999, when everybody was freaking out about the millennium, everything is going to crash and what. So I set up the company computers of the company I was working for and make sure everything was compliant, Y2K compliant. And then I set myself up to go to the States. The biggest thing was, well, what if I don't get a visa? Then I was like, well, what if I get it? One thing I'd always been is I think I was always a very optimistic person. Yeah.
And I the glass half full type.
I've always been a glass full, half full. So I went to get the visa and I got it. So even I was surprised how quickly it happened. Because, you go, you hear people's stories and this and that. And so went, my daughter went, my sister went, and they were denied 5 times.
And that was after the bomb blast, Kwanzaa.
Yes, exactly. It was right after the bomb blast. Yeah. And I said, you know what? My life is not anybody else's life. My fate is my fate. When God says when He created you, He made a plan for you. So I believed He made a plan for me, not for me based on so-and-so and so on. And because I didn't have anybody in the family showing me this is the way, like in that aspect of traveling and everything, I decided I'll be the trailblazer. Now blaze my own trail and hopefully for others who dare to dream. So I went for the visa, got it, stayed here, organized myself for 3 months, and I flew out end of 1999. It was, of course, a very chilly experience because I got to the States, it was winter time. In Kenya, July we say it's cold, surely. it's like springtime. So I get there, a huge culture shock. I get to a university, I realize, my goodness, there's only one supermarket. I'm thinking, this is not the America that I always saw on the TV.
Yeah.
So quickly switched.
Tiny town.
Yes, it was a very little town called Ottawa. It was called Ottawa. The university was called Ottawa University. There was only one bank called the People's Bank. I still have a pen to show. 20 how many years ago. So I was like, this is not it. 3 days later, I quit that school. And again, with optimism, I applied to another school. Within 2 weeks, I was admitted. How that happened, it's God's miracles. So yeah, I went there, went to Washburn University in Topeka, Kansas, which, of course, is a very small city. And like I said, it took me a while to adjust to that culture, because when you're living and going to a country out there, you have certain perceptions of what to expect because of what we see on media. We think everything we see in movies is exactly what you're going to find there. And I get there and I'm realizing, man, there's this one bird called the squirrel, and I'm thinking, where is this? So yeah, it was good. But the fact that I was open to go there, and I go there and I got very shocked culturally, the weather and everything, I got homesick and got frustrated and depressed like many international students do. Fortunately for many, they probably have relatives there that would receive them, or they can at least cry together. I didn't know anybody. I boarded a flight, didn't have a family, didn't have a relative to show me around. I had to go and learn how to pull my own ropes. But that one time I got to a point I was so frustrated, Levi, and I thought, you know what? Defeat has never been in my vocabulary. I cannot pack my things and go back home. I've spent so much money. I've sold everything I had here to really go to the States to study and really create another experience there. Yeah. So by packing and going back home means I am admitting or I'm accepting failure.
You crossed the river and burnt the bridge?
No, I didn't quite...
Like going back time.
Right. No. I'm like, I'm not going back, not now. I knew I wanted to come back at some point, but not then. I mean, I'm barely in school for 2 months and I'm like, what is this I got myself into, Because in Kenya I was doing well. I mean, I had a thriving IT business. I was doing just fine. But then I knew the time had come and I needed to change. I needed a transition. I wanted to change and go somewhere else. I just knew. Like when you live somewhere and you're like, I've enjoyed this life up to here. Now I want a new challenge. I want a new experience. So that's where I was. So I determined to pursue it, but most of it really took a lot of prayer and finding who are the right people to connect with. And being in the States really, or being in any foreign country, can be it's a time it can be very vulnerable. So I didn't make friendships very easily, especially people that I didn't know, cultures from cultures that I didn't know. But quickly I realized those are actually some of the best people because they'll show you around. They know their world. You don't just hang out with people that are like you, think like you only know the same things that you know. And so I quickly started shifting gears and assimilating with the American culture and the Americans and Latinos and all that. And I realized, it's not as bad as I thought. But then again, in 8 months I moved again and went to another school in another city and another town. In other words, in essence, in 1 year I was in 3 universities. How? I don't know, but I managed to somehow jump from this to the other and to the other. And finally when I got to Dallas, Texas, I settled and I knew that was the right place to be. And
and then over time, so what happened over that time, between that time and the time you moved back, and when was that?
Well, I was in the States for 13 years. And but out of those 13 years, I would come back home, back and forth for 7 years. I was in the States for the first time, almost 6 years without coming home. So I didn't even realize how your environment can actually shape your mindset. You can become so conditioned to the environment you're living in. So I came back home, and this is what happened. Before I went to the States, like I said earlier, I knew one thing. I'd gotten to a point, and I had, as I was sharing with my mom and my family, I was also sharing with God, and I was telling him, this is where I feel I am, this is where I would like to be. But we are told when we commit our desires to him, when we delight in him, he gives us the desires of our heart. So I actually said it, you know what, you tell me you will show me great and mighty things. I would like to experience this life, if it's your will. And if that happens, God, I promise I will do something for you. I want to be able to come back and go minister to kids in the villages where I was when I first met missionaries years ago. And I wanted to be able to share, hopefully, an experience that can give them hope and a platform to dream of a life for themselves. And so when I went there, Levi, I was hit with that life of bills after bills after bills. And international students' life is so expensive. But then again, I was guided by this faith thing. And I dared to knock on doors where people said, please don't dare, please don't dare. So I went on and I applied for company sponsorship. So my education actually was, I only paid for my education for 1 year, a year and about 1 term, so about 3 semesters. After that, I was educated by my employer. So when that happened, I said, God, this must be you. Okay, now I need to do what I said I would do for you. I will want to go back and give back to the kids. But how do I even start that, you know? So I got caught up in still this bills and, you know, American lifestyle. And I kind of seemed to lose focus of what I had promised God, but he had done his part. So in 2004, which
as
is when...
many do.
As many do, actually, and they completely forget. But you know, the best thing is, if you start losing your path, the best thing is you catch yourself. If you catch yourself and dare to go back. But if you don't catch yourself or you ignore that voice, you know, sometimes some of us will catch ourselves, but we just ignore it and just keep going. So I kind of was ignoring it. And then that employer, after I graduated my associate's degree, I took a handshake. You know, they were giving a handshake. I took a handshake so I can go think, really, what do I want with my life? And during that time, I still say this was a God-given opportunity. I had my mom and grandma visit me in the States. I invited them with the handshake money that I got. I was jobless for 8 months, but they were there staying with me. And then now I started looking for a job because my money was depleting. Then they knew what promise I had made before I left Kenya. So one thing, we were sitting for dinner one night, and before grandma prayed, my grandma was a very, very prayerful woman, very prayerful. She says, Zembi, we've been talking and you know you asked God to give you this opportunity. You've been here now for 4 years. What are your plans on coming back home and giving? And I'm thinking, I mean, you guys, this is one country that is full of bills and responsibilities and this. And it's not as easy as just pack and go. I'm looking at the air ticket and everything. I told her, Grandma, let's talk about me getting a job first. She said, well, you had a job. You had your education paid for, and now here you are. Remember, it's about faith. So she challenged me to trust the same God who I trusted to get me there, to also be able to enable me to accomplish what I want to accomplish. And she gave me the example of John, and she said, until you do it, you will never find any peace in your heart. So I remember it was July 2004, and well, she prayed, and a few months, 3 months after that, I got a job, just as they were planning to fly back home with my mom. So they left me at a job. So they said, when we go home, when should we expect you? I mean, they put me under pressure. But then I said, well, if God opens a door, maybe next year. They said, not if God opens a door. They say, when are you coming? When you pray, you must be specific. We want to know what we're praying for. So that challenged me, and I took it upon myself, and it became now my journey of faith, my new journey of faith of, okay, now I want to come back home and give maybe an annual Christmas thing for kids. So
initially you're thinking small, just maybe annually.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, annually, once a year, Christmas time, come give them candy. Because that's what I used to see with the missionaries, and that's really, I'm thinking. And you know, I used to think, I didn't even think about it from a missionary perspective, because I thought missionaries are white people who come to our country. You know, I've never seen black missionaries growing up, so I thought, I'm just coming to give them Christmas. I'm not really doing this missionary thing, and it's not going to be long time.
It's a heavy time in Rochi.
Yes. So I thought, I cannot wear that, right? Yeah. So so I started planning, and the following year, I decided I'm going to start speaking it and telling my friends, by the way, this year I'm going home to take Christmas to the kids in my village. And people are like, oh, excited. They started giving me gifts in July of 2005, because I'm telling them that Christmas I'm coming home. I'm thinking, I don't even have airfare. I don't have, at that time, you know, I was earning $9.25 an hour. And I'm thinking, I will come, but I don't know how. So anyway, I collected things. My store was packed, you know, my little apartment was packed, and I'm thinking, God, okay, you better not shame me. I've collected these things. People think I'm going home, so it better happen. Otherwise, you're going to embarrass yourself. And that's how I used to talk to God. It's like, if this is you, you better do it. Because I keep telling people I'm doing it by faith. Where is your faith in God? Okay, so if I'm telling them this and then you let me down or it doesn't happen, how is that supposed to, you know, help them even want to pursue that faith? So God came through for me, Levi, in ways that I cannot to this day fathom. And so people, after people gave, a lady came through end of September that same year. So I was creating a website. So somebody offered to create a website for me from my church. When he did it, before he could hand it over to me for administration, he floated it out there. I don't know how they do it. I'm in IT, but not in the website department. So he floated it out there, and a certain lady in Dallas who ran a children rescue center saw a link to my website and saw the project that I was working on. So she sends me an email and invites me to meet with her. Long story short, they collected a lot of gifts, and then she took everything and ordered DHL to ship all the boxes to Kenya. I never saw the bill. Never knew where they were shipped from. I just knew they came from the States and they came to Kenya. And so now the next thing was for me to find an air ticket, really, and come distribute these things. And so what I did is, I was at work one day, and so I saw a link from Bank of America. You know, the way they'll send you those things of you've been pre-qualified for this credit card, click this for a few seconds. So I kept ignoring it until I said, you know, what the heck, what do I have to lose, right? So I clicked, boom, in 15 seconds or less than 30 seconds, I had a credit card approved, $4,500 limit. I'm like, okay, my ticket is paid. So that's how I started my first trip here. And when I did it, I came and we give to about 300 kids in my village. And I was like, wow, you know, when I saw, they were so excited, and it reminded me of when I was a little kid. And I was like, wow, this is so nice. So actually it felt nice to me to see them so happy from things that people gave. I didn't even have to. So I realized one thing. Number one, I didn't have to spend my own money to make that possible. I just needed to commit and avail myself. And then God provided the resources, and that happened. So I decided, okay, I can do this every year. So I went back the following year, before, instead of just doing a Christmas thing, after being here till 2005, 2006, it was apparent that they needed more than just Christmas gifts. They needed some school supplies and help. So the vision is beginning to grow, and the need.
That they say for ground vitu need different.
Need different, you know, you know, it's true. I came on the ground, and what I thought was, so I guess, you know, my mentor,
It's
Oprah.
not just about eating on Christmas Day. After that, we still have to eat more.
They still have to. They have to eat, they have to, you know. So, you know, I always admired and followed Oprah Winfrey for many, many years. And one thing she always said, when your heart is willing, your feet will follow. And then she would always say that whatever you dream, just remember God can dream a bigger dream than you. So that was a God dreaming, you know, capacity, not mine. So from 2006, I started doing, again, an annual trip, but now doing school supplies and small gifts. It became more now about school supplies, and then now coming and speaking to kids and empowering them. And I would just see their faces light. As they light up, and then more schools were reaching out to me, but then I wouldn't have enough time when I'd come to Kenya. So I would do that, and I started thinking, you know, maybe this is something I could do in future, but when the future was, that remained to be seen.
Not sure at that point.
No, because I mean, my career is thriving and everything, but you know, when God comes into your life and knocks on your door, and He knows what He wants you to do, I believe if you're open and if you're listening, you will know when He's leading. And so after doing that for 6 years actually, 2011 I came home. This time we did a medical missions trip. Came with the doctor and partnered with some local medics here, and we did two clinics for 4 days in 2 different communities. I was like, oh, this thing is growing, and now what do I do then? I didn't plan at that time that I'm ready to pack and move back. But when I went back to the States, I really had not much peace going back to work. I went back, my heart was still back here. So I went back, I'm supposed to report to work the following week, but my heart was still stuck in Kenya. And I started feeling that there's this pull, my heart is being pulled back here. I felt like every time I come, I see so much impact, I see so much life. Like you speak and you see young people's lives like dreams come to life. Yeah, so I started asking God, is this me? Just with because I was crazy about kids, and it's like, is it just me maybe being overly passionate about it, or is this you? Yes, and so...
I'm going to pause you right there.
Yes.
Is it me or is it you? That's the question.
Right.
We're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're speaking with Rosemary Nzembi about her story abroad and back. And of course, she's also going to be giving us some advice on what you need to know before you go overseas.
Right.
Stay tuned, don't go away. We'll be right back.